Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fitt Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Krisna Bhargava, CEO of Arena, the complete mobile smart gym. In this episode, we discuss Arena's innovative strength training solution and its focus on human performance, including athletes, strength coaches, and physical therapists. Krisna details the company's plan to accelerate growth, and we cover Arena's mission to replace the dumbbell. Before today's episode, I wanted to share some updates to the Fitt Insider platform. As you might know, in addition to this podcast, we send a weekly newsletter to help operators stay informed and make better decisions. We also launched an industry-specific jobs board filled with hundreds of openings at top companies, and we're actively investing in early-stage health and fitness startups. To see what's new or to get in touch, visit insider.fit.co. Hi, Krisna. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Yeah, excited to chat today. And I think just to kick things off, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about Arena?
Sure, yeah. I'm Krisna Bhargava. I'm the CEO of Arena. And we're trying to build the world's next level, next-gen strength platform. And, not maybe a casual platform, not something that you can go do live classes and be entertained by, but maybe something that's a little bit more performance-oriented. So we basically build a box with a cable that comes out of it. And then you, as a user, can just get on there and lift up to 200 pounds. But what's going on under the hood is a lot of advanced robotics that enable it to be portable, to create that much resistance, to track everything you do on there. And if you're an absolute nerd with strength training like me, this is a great platform because it means never counting complicated logs again. And if you're a physical therapist, it's great because now you actually have a way of quantifying how you're treating somebody, and you can send them home with it, and you can monitor them remotely. So we kind of span that performance to healthcare space.
Yeah, you oversimplify it by saying a platform. Some technology, robotics that are in there.
Yeah.
You have a pretty in-depth background, I guess you could say, in terms of like engineering and hardware, marrying those things with this strength training and kind of human performance. Maybe not to the extent, the fullest depth of your knowledge, but can you take us under the hood a little bit? So when you say platform and robotics, like how does this work and what are we talking about in terms of the capabilities for strength training?
Yeah, at a very basic level, we have something like what you would find in a Tesla, right? You have a motor that directly engages with the wheel, and in this case, it's a spool. We have a cable that's wrapped around that spool. The tricky part is getting that to generate resistance, which is really even, really consistent, and that you can just adjust instantly from your phone or some other mobile platform. And that's really where all the cleverness comes into play. So we knew that a lot of our users are already athletic. They're on sports teams or they're going to group fitness classes. They're in environments where this equipment gets beaten up, it gets moved around. So we needed it to be portable, and we needed it to be compact, right? So what we did is we took that motor to wheel technology and we took the sort of regenerative braking systems that you would find in an electric car, high performance electric car, and we miniaturized that and we put it in the system, in the Arena platform. So what you find is a motor, a spool, a battery, and a bunch of electronics that coordinate those so that every time you lift on the system, it's putting energy into resisting you, but you're also putting energy back into the system. And like that, the end user ends up seeing 20 to 30 days of battery life on one charge. They're able to put it on a hand truck and take it to the park, or a studio like Barry's or some folks like that. They can deploy these things very easily without having to install it into the ground or into a wall or some other major piece of equipment might be in a normal gym setting.
Yeah, or just in my case, in my garage, like 2,000 pounds of weight that are down there, and moving them like we are now just from the garage into the basement is a workout in and of itself. So just taking this platform and being able to move it not only around the house, but on the go, I think is pretty interesting as well, which, it makes you think, and I'd be curious to hear you talk about it. Like, obviously all the hype right now is at-home fitness and the number of at-home fitness companies, whether it's connected equipment or just streaming content. The whole idea is that you're choosing between working out in a gym or working out in your home. with Arena, you even kind of alluded to like, hey, physical therapists or in the studios or working out outside. How do you think about that, where you fit into the landscape or maybe stand out from the landscape, just given the kind of portability of the device?
Yeah, I think a lot of the solutions out there in the market now are kind of pointed at solving the problem where you have someone who doesn't know much about fitness. They want to get in shape. And so they put a trainer in the loop and they bring in a piece of hardware to help them interface, right? So if you're building a spin bike with a screen on it, or you're building something else with a screen on it, really the screen is the conduit for all the critical information. And, we're all used to seeing bikes and rowers and so there's a sense of familiarity there. Maybe in the case of some of the strength solutions, it's a little bit more exotic, but for the most part, things look typical. It's what you would see in a gym. Our focus is really a little bit different. We're trying to create the best product and leverage technology to create the best solution to enhance human performance, right? So you've got a goal, right? Maybe you're a triathlete and you're trying to improve your strength factors. You're trying to improve your recovery factors, and you incorporate strength training into that regimen. And that's, by the way, that's a growing trend in endurance sports. People are starting to incorporate strength training over the last 10 years or so, more proactively into their platform. So, we look at Arena as being a tool, an instrument that plugs right into that and can enable that in a serious way. And if you are maybe more casual than like a triathlete and you like to go to group fitness classes or something like that, Arena is a product that you can buy and use in your home, which delivers a similar experience that you're already familiar with, but it can also live in that studio. And so if there's content developed by that studio for the Arena platform, it sort of transcends the space. And that space, by the way, for a lot of people, it's about community. It's about, maybe that's like the 15 people they get to interact with who aren't at work for that week. It means other things to them than just fitness and guidance, right? So we don't want to take that away from them. We just want to enable it to be maybe more performance oriented, right? So the ease of use that they would have at home, kind of happens to the studio. They're able to do both as it's convenient or clean or hygienic, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see. There was, even until recently, the focus on either cardio equipment or like group fitness classes. And there are lots of different spins on that in terms of whether it was in person or at home or digital or interactive. But then this, the way that we think about it, like this smart strength category emerges. And there's obviously devices and companies like Arena who are in that area. But there's also now who is the customer, right, for these different products and solutions that exist. And you talk about, the focus on high performance and encouraging and enabling people to set and achieve those goals. When you think about all the other factors, content, community, music, right, all the things that have become part of what we think of as fitness, do you think about, how you incorporate those into what you're trying to do with Arena, or how then, maybe what you're doing separates you, right, from the class of companies that are trying to compete in that area? Just how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think, at least initially for the immediately foreseeable future, we're really focused on, guys like me who put their headphones on at the gym and don't want to be bothered and kind of know what they're doing, make their lives a little bit easier, make that experience more accessible at home or maybe even at the gym, but now they can carry the data around in their pocket. And at the same time, there are folks like my product manager, who's a former D1 swimmer, and she absolutely loves group fitness classes and consumes these things by the gallon in a way that I can't keep up. And Arena works for her, right? She gets on there. She tests the device out all the time. She tests out every new class that we put on the platform. And, it gets her a high intensity interval with resistance type experience. And she uses the guided class features to really motivate that. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is if you already understand fitness a little bit and you've had some experiences that have turned you onto it, that's like the basic level of education we expect from most of our initial users. And, that's also where we think there's the most growth, right? Right now, most millennials digest fitness in some way. Maybe they don't have religion. I know that's been said before, or they don't have other forms of community in the way that previous generations did. But fitness is definitely a core pillar of how they relate to one another. And that's only increasing all the time, right? Younger generations than my own are also doing the same thing. They're in that trend. We kind of service that trend. Now, at the same time, a lot of folks who are into sports, who are into performance athletics, are following that, or maybe they're just quantified self nerds, find the platform very appealing because it is a free motion type device. You can apply resistance to all kinds of exotic movements. For example, we have a pull-up world champion right now who's been posting for us. We sold the device to, and he's been using it to increase his grip strength. Right, so he's created fingerboards that he attaches to the cable, and he uses the hip belt to weigh himself down as he's doing resisted pull-ups. And so there's all these exotic use cases that we're excited to discover by just putting it in the hands of performance athletes and just seeing what they do. And we suspect that some customers are going to want to emulate those behaviors because they aspire to be really good at a particular sport, or they're just bored with the things they've been doing. So. Yeah, that's how we look at it. It's a little more bottoms up, I think, than most of the industry does. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's both smart and exciting for what's possible in the at-home setting, because I know myself as someone who has been an athlete. I've been strength training for 15 plus years at this point, and in order to do what some of the movements even that Arena would enable. Prior to this, the only option was I buy a 6 foot by 8 foot pulley system that somehow enables me to do this and have the full range of motion from the floor to the ceiling and those types of things. But having this alternative really, it gives your imagination can run wild, and that's kind of what you're talking about as people start to get their hands on it and play with it. Yeah, changing gears a little bit. Another area I wanted to talk about, just given the focus on hardware and manufacturing. What is the current supply chain logistical situation looking like for you? I know pretty much as I dig into it and both talk to founders and other operators, basically a logistical nightmare. How have you been able to kind of, ward that off or maybe get ahead in terms of, manufacturing, distribution, all those considerations?
We're maybe a little bit different than some of the companies in this space, right? We got started during the pandemic, and lucky or blessed to have a background in looking at infectious diseases and kind of having some predictions that turn out to be accurate about what would happen here. So we actually planned all the manufacturing. We grew all the manufacturing domestically, and we applied some techniques and design for manufacturing that would limit our dependency on parts that come from overseas. Namely chips, right? Everybody talks about chips. That's the word du jour. But we really don't have that big of a dependency compared to other products out there. We don't have a screen, for example, right? Screen drivers are probably one of the biggest shortages. We're not trying to deliver an experience that, other products are trying to deliver, where you're immersed in front of this big screen and you're viewing a trainer and they're sucking you in with their captive personality and all that. Actually, we want you to be sweating and breathing so hard that you can barely look at the screen. It's just there to change the weight and see how the movement is done. And so the phone is kind of off to the side on a little stand. But yeah, for the most part, we've set ourselves up to scale extraordinarily quickly. And we do the vast majority of our manufacturing right here in the States. So the systems are assembled in Nevada. Circuit boards are assembled here in the Bay Area. Our lab, our workshop where I'm sitting today is in San Francisco, kind of positioned in between the two in case engineers need to intercept any assemblies going into Nevada. So that's how we built things a little bit. We actually don't perceive there being that much risk in trying to get into thousands, if not tens of thousands of units and beyond, as long as we purchase things an adequate number of months ahead of schedule. But yeah, again, we don't really have any parts that are from the automotive industry or big screen drivers, things that are really, really in depletion right now.
Yeah, it's, I'm sure, a great feeling as you're thinking about and working on continuing to scale up and given the constant state of everything being in flux, it feels like at this point.
And by the way, that was not trivial. In fact, it delayed our release of the product pretty substantially. We had to keep redesigning until we could get into a space that we felt like would be secure for the next 5 or 6 years. That's how we've planned ahead, actually, is that, expect shortages for up to 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, but I mean, to the point around the progress that you've been able to make, as you just laid it out, like that delay initially up front then enables you to, proceed without that looming over your head. I think so. Making that kind of tough decision while in the moment felt like probably changing the game, right? Negatively in terms of postponing it. Now it's like flip the script and change the game in the positive direction. So I'm sure that's a relief. And in another area, when we talk about things being in flux, there's this concern, debate, and even kind of like, I don't know, maybe headline reading going on about, is the future of fitness, is it in the gym? Is it in the home? Who can command the biggest share of wallet, right, for the consumer in terms of, is it going to be a hybrid or omni-channel offering? Just given what we've talked about today, it doesn't sound like you're necessarily as locked in, right, to this purely binary future of fitness. But do you have a perspective? Do you have a take on how things are going to play out and maybe what that means for Arena either way?
Yeah, you kind of said it earlier. You've got thousands of pounds of weights to get one effective, strength training solution in your house. We always like to say we're going to replace the dumbbell. And, dumbbells are everywhere. They're in gyms, they're in apartments, they're in everything in between. They're in military training camps, Anywhere there's a dumbbell, we're going to replace it. And, our unit only weighs 50 pounds. It replaces potentially up to 2,000 pounds worth of equipment. So we're sort of agnostic as to where it goes. And this kind of harkens back to why we're not really investing a ton of effort into the content business and giving you a trainer in the loop. That's really not our focus. Our focus is folks already pick up heavy weights and swing them around and kind of know what to do with it, and just making their lives a little bit easier, a little bit better at first. And, as these tools, as the Arena platform becomes more ubiquitous, because it is digital, because it is connected, you're able to pull people in who maybe have less experience, just as equal to the benefit of people who are experienced or who are maybe even professional athletes.
So it's in terms of at home, in person, on location, athletes, doesn't matter. If there's a weight, potentially you could replace it and that kind of grows that addressable market and alleviates the burden of like this conversation, right? What is the future of fitness and how do companies there compete? I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Have you, thought about or had conversations around breaking into commercial or residential or other kind of key partnerships as you think about the distribution channels, right? And possibilities down those paths?
Yeah, I'd actually say that more than half of the inquiries we get for larger volume sales are from commercial partners, potentially. And without saying too much, with some of our initial deliveries, they've gone to pro sports teams who are looking at this as a training solution for the long term. And it's not just in their athletic facilities, it's what they could take on the road with them too. One example, there's an Air Force trainer that we plan on making deliveries to as well. So there's a lot of space, there's a lot of room there for us to explore. I think what's different about us as a company than maybe some of the other solutions out there is we don't have to sell the customer as much on an experience. We're sort of build it and they will come. We have a compelling solution, and then with the right messaging, people realize, oh, this is something that solves a problem I have, right? Which is carting around 2,000 pounds of equipment. Actually, the best is when we put someone on the unit. When they look at a box like this, it's like $2,500 metal box with a cable in it. And, why would I spend that much money on a box, right? But you put them on there and they lift 20 pounds, 30 pounds on it, and they have this like, oh shit moment that occurs where they go, this is really cool. Like that's really what we have to do. That's the experience that we have to create to convince people that this is a good alternative for what the state of the art is, which is heavy metal objects, right? I think this would not be the case if we leaned more into trying to capture that customer who's maybe sitting on the couch and it's time to get up. They know they need to get into shape and all that. We're also, I mentioned that our team we're not content innovators, right? We're not traditional fitness guys, right? My VP of engineering is a triathlete, but he's also like an IoT engineer from Google. So, our perspective on this is we'll just build the best, most compelling hardware solution or connected solution for the problem at hand. And the content will sort of flow from partners potentially who pick this up at an institutional level. So, for example, some of these sports teams who have Arena and are excited to use it for training are also thinking about how to leverage the mobile experience as a way to get their players to engage fans, right? So they've got their own programs that they're already designing on Arena to help player performance, but they could take that exact same program and hand it off to fans of their team, right? So
Very
you could
cool.
be doing those programs at home or at the gym or what have you.
Yeah, I think the point as you're talking about it, and for those who aren't seeing the video, maybe just listening, you're sitting in what you referred to as like the lab. Is that right?
Yeah. Technically it's headquarters. We call it the lab.
Yeah. And
there's a bunch of robots behind me. I don't know if you can.
Yeah. So super industrial, very, above, over my head in terms of, I'm sure what's going on in there and what you're making, but also at the same time looking very jacked that you're obviously working out. So it's marrying two worlds, I think, that don't necessarily go together typically in terms of, what problem you're trying to solve, how you're going about it, and then what you're bringing to the table in terms of both capabilities and focus to be able to execute against that. So I think this representation, on the screen now is pretty evident in that.
I'm going to take the compliment to heart because the only reason I didn't atrophy during the pandemic has basically been I had one of the prototypes at home. And so I was able to work out on that every day. But, I think a lot of people are surprised when they get on there and they think it's going to be a toy or it's going to feel like resistance bands or a flywheel or something. And deadlifting and squatting on this platform at, more than 100 pounds is very challenging.
Yeah.
You too can be a jacked CEO of a fitness company.
I'm working on it. I just have way more equipment. One of the things I meant to ask when we were talking about manufacturing, right? You're at the onset, you talked about it as like, the platform and the pulleys and the technology modestly and maybe downplaying it. And then now you're talking about when people are getting on it, experiencing it and that kind of opening their eyes to what's possible. But in terms of defensibility, can somebody else do this? How easy is it to recreate like the technology that's gone into this? Where do you all sit from that vantage point?
Good luck. a lot of love and a lot of thought has gone into making this thing. And it's not just about being able to do what we're doing at a functional level, right? Or at a features level. It's being able to do it at scale, which is really a challenge, and to make it profitable, right? So, right out of the gate, our unit economics are profitable. Very unusual in the connected fitness space. I think a lot of companies depend on recruiting monthly subscribers to stay alive and offset how difficult it is to build, how expensive it is to build hardware. That's not the way that we've built the system. So I'd say about more than half of the IP we've developed has really been about being able to meet scale. When your mission is to replace the dumbbell and you start counting up how many dumbbells there are out there, how many kits there are out there, you realize, okay, this is not a trivial problem. We're talking about tens of millions over 5 or 6 years. So that's kind of our perspective on where we've put our development dollars and what makes this thing fundamentally difficult. The other thing is we have a very strong patent portfolio. It's been attractive to other parties in the space. And so we're kind of aware of our position there. And, I'm sure there are folks who will go out and ignore that or disrespect it. But, we're very aware and our investors are very aware of the position we're in and our ability to sort of launch into the marketplace and create defensible territory there.
Yeah. And we see, it feels like every day, the interest from other companies that are looking, and also to your point, like the companies that are infringing on some of those other technologies that are out there. But it sounds like definitely in a position of strength when it comes to what you've created, both from a technology standpoint and from just like the positioning, right, in the landscape. You mentioned there kind of also investors being confident in your position. I wanted to mention, for full transparency, Fitt Insider, small investor in Arena, but super excited to be a very small part of the team. And in terms of, funding, capitalization, as you're thinking about continuing to fund growth, earlier this year, raised some funding, brought on additional capital. How are you thinking about deploying that capital, continuing to grow, and maybe potentially adding additional funding as you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually just finished raising an extension to our initial seed capital We've been relatively modest, I'd say, compared to other companies in the connected fitness space. We've been trying to stay very capital efficient. We've been trying to solve sort of on a rolling triage basis, the major 3 or 4 problems at any given time. And we took that approach because, right now valuations in the space personally strike me as high. And I realize the irony of being a CEO in this space, and I should be pushing for our own valuation or for everyone's valuations in this space because I just benefit from it. But I think it's a little bit unreasonable. And the reason is that we don't really know what consumer trends are going to look like through this pandemic and on the outside of it. And, I think, like a year ago, I was listening to banks put out statements like, oh, the pandemic will be over in 6 months. And then, at the same time, talking to my friends who work in epidemiology who are saying it's going to take 5 years. And sort of thinking back to my own experiences working in infectious disease in my 20s and having my own opinions there. And all you can conclude with so much different information, so much variation is that, okay, things are just not predictable. So you have to take it day by day and look at where you are right now and what problems you're solving right now, and what consumers are saying to you as a company. So from that perspective, we've been modest relative to other companies, but we've been a lot more efficient at solving critical problems and moving faster on product development and deployment. Now we're really going to start investing in growth. That's kind of been the reason why we raised this extension capital through the summer, going into the winter. And we really haven't deployed much in marketing, but we're going to start doing that a little bit now. I would not expect us to be, anytime soon doing maybe what some of the bigger players are doing, where they go out and raise from these mega funds and, just take up the airwaves. We're a little more focused. We know who our customer is. We know we have very good success once we put people on the unit. We know that strength and conditioning coaches love this stuff. Physical therapists love this stuff. The people who are kind of in the know, who are trained, who understand what a good fitness regimen and tool looks like. Those are the folks that we just take the device to and we're able to convince. And they happen to be trendsetters for consumers in the long term. So it's a little bit of a different strategy there. Folks who are involved in player performance, players themselves, weekend warriors, quantified self nerds, guys who hang out at the gym with their headphones on. That's kind of our focus here, or group fitness studios.
Yeah. As you were talking about it, it also you mentioned earlier, like not competing or trying to differentiate necessarily on the content or having another screen that people can look at when they're working out, or, even the idea that you don't want them to, right? You want them to be kind of consumed by the workout, so to speak. It also, as you were giving that explanation, opens the door in terms of marketing, where the traditional channels where you're competing for the same customer are getting not only crowded, but more expensive. And you see it going like almost two ways. There's like, we recruit a high profile celebrity or celebrity instructor to endorse the product or do some type of content series, or you pay whatever the number happens to be that day in terms of acquisition costs on, the social platforms. As you think about growth and ramping up, are there particular channels that have worked to this point? You mentioned getting people on the device and getting them to try it, but are there things that have worked to this point that you're excited about scaling, or are there things that you've maybe looked at and with anticipation that now you're able to push forward into?
Yeah, I think fundamentally the demo is the number one thing that convinces people, right? They get on there, they try it out, they suddenly get it. And that's been 9 for 10 convert on sales for us. So how do we take that observation and scale that? That's something we're looking at carefully. Another thing that has worked out really well, there are a lot of celebrities out there who can tell the story, but we have worked with a couple of, influencer creator types who are really performance oriented and, not necessarily professional athletes, but they're athletic and they're focused on, certain missions in life, right? Like Devin Levesque is a great example of that. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he bear crawled the New York City Marathon for veterans' mental health. And, he's been an advisor to the company since early on. We worked with him not only to get product feedback, but also just to, bulletproof test. Devin's crazy. If you give him something, he will break it. He'll find the most exotic way to use it and break it. So, we put prototypes out there with him when he was training to do this bear crawl. And, we were able to see that audiences who really cared about their athleticism, cared about his mission engaged with us as a company and converted to pre-orders when we worked with him in that way. So we're always on the lookout for creators who, they have a cause, they have a calling, and being an athlete is an enabling part of that, of fulfilling that calling, right? That's something that's very exciting for us that we want to explore more of.
Yeah, that'll be awesome to see as you ramp up. And I think as we get towards the end of the conversation and maybe just look ahead, we've touched on a lot, but wanted to see, looking ahead, given that it's like coming towards the end of the year, getting into 2022, any kind of key priorities that we should look out for, anything in general that you're excited about, or, like I said, folks should keep an eye out?
Yeah, 2022 is a big year for us. We're going to start ramping incredibly hard on deliveries. And, what gets me excited is that there could be thousands, if not more, of these units out there over the next year. And so really it's going to be our growth year. 2021 was about solving our design challenges, dealing with an endless number of headaches involved with supply chain, and just figuring out our footing with our team and what did we want our brand to be? What did we want our mission to be? But 2022 is really about growing. It's about taking what we've built that we know works, a team that really trusts each other, and scaling all of that up.
Awesome. And yeah, with that, as you're ramping up and growing, and I'm sure listeners, you've kind of piqued their interest throughout the conversation today. We'll get you out of here on this. Where can folks go to learn more, check out the product maybe online, and follow along?
Yeah, our website is goarena.co. goarena.co. We recently updated it. We put a lot more information about the product in there. If you're more of a technically minded person, there's some cool renderings up there about, what it looks like on the inside. If you're more of a performance oriented user type, you're probably better off on our Instagram. You can take a look at some really interesting athletes using this in creative ways. It's at go.arena.
Awesome. I hope folks check that out, and really appreciate you making some time today. Enjoy the conversation and excited to share it with everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fitt Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.